The sea gave up the crate like it wanted to be rid of it. At first light, a rusted fishing trawler found the metal box tangled in its nets. The crew thought it was a piece of wreckage from some lost ship. The box was smooth and cold. No name, no flag, just a small mark like a seed pressed into the lid. News vans came before the tow truck. Phones filled with pictures. People called it a mystery. Some said it was a gift. Others said it was a trap. The government took the crate. They moved it to a hangar behind a fence and built a wall of cameras. Dr. Mara Hale stood at the hangar doors and watched the crate from under bright lights. She was not young, but she had the steady hands of someone who fixed hard things. She had run labs, argued with ministers, and calmed armies of nervous scientists. Today she felt like someone who might open a single old book and find a page that changed everything. The crate did not look like it belonged in any museum. It had no handles, no seams. The metal was dark, as if it drank light. When Mara touched the lid with a gloved hand, the mark on the cover gave a faint glow. The glow went up her arm and left a warm line on her skin. She pulled back. The camera caught the moment. The world watched. They tried every scanner they had. The box answered none. X-rays slid off it like rain off a leaf. Sound tests returned small, deep tones that did not match any known scale. The crate hummed at night, soft and low, like something that remembered a voice. Inside the hangar, engineers built a room for the opening. They sealed the floor and lay down white sheets. A row of microphones hung like quiet birds. Television crews lined the walls. Everyone agreed the world had the right to see. Everyone argued about what should happen next. At noon, they opened the lid. It did not make a dramatic sound. It slid away without a seam, like a sun unmasking. Steam rose from inside, thin and blue. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and something sweet, like the memory of rain. Inside the crate lay a smaller box, neat and simple. On top, a thin envelope waited. A camera zoomed in on the envelope. The handwriting on it was clean and old. 4 words were written in English that looked like a language learned from many tongues: "Welcome kit for humans." Applause broke in the crowd like a tired wave. Some people laughed. Soldiers breathed out. Scientists leaned forward. Dr. Mara picked up the envelope with gloved hands. She held it like it might break. She slid a finger under the flap and the paper folded open on its own. A single card rested inside. The card showed a tiny scene drawn in lines, 3 small dots in a line, 2 far away, 1 close. Under the dots, in small print, a sentence blinked like a slow heartbeat: "Return to sender." The lights in the hangar dimmed for a blink. The cameras kept rolling. Someone said the word out loud: "Returned." It tasted different in the mouth. It sounded like an answer and a warning at once. Then the card unfurled like a leaf. A thin line of light rose and formed a map in the air. It was simple, not like Earth maps, more like a picture that meant memory. The dots moved. 1 dot sat on a blue world. The other 2 spun far away in slow circles. A voice soft and old came from the little box. It spoke one phrase in perfect, gentle English: "We regret the error." Words do not sound the same on live television. This did. The voice had calm in it. It had a patience that made people hold their breath. The voice said nothing more. Phones everywhere chimed. In a small apartment across the city, a boy named Tarek watched the live feed while he drew rockets in a notebook. He did not know why his heart thudded. He placed his pencil down and hummed an old song his grandmother used to sing. The tune matched the tiny voice from the card, as if the song had been waiting in the air for years. In the hangar, someone tried to take the card away. The card softened and folded, then flattened like a living thing. It showed a second image, a hand touching a small stone, and the stone opening like a mouth. The image blinked. For a moment, everyone thought they saw a face inside the stone. A line of letters slid across the map: "Do not keep what you did not ask for." A guard on duty made a small noise and stepped back. The hangar doors shut with a heavy sound. The lock clicked twice, once for the hangar and once for the world. The cameras continued to record, but their lights felt farther away. The scientists argued. They spoke of protocols, of quarantine, of study, and destruction. The council on the screen sent messages. Feet walked in halls. In the dark, the crate hummed again, deeper, as if it learned the way the hangar's heart beat. That night, while the news channels replayed the moment a dozen times, Dr. Mara sat alone beside the small box. Her hand rested on the cold metal. The glow from the mark under her skin had faded, but the line it left kept her awake. She thought of old myths, of gifts that carry demands, of things returned because wrongs once done must be set right. Outside, the sea rolled on without caring for the crate or the men who opened it. Inside, the small map in the air bent and folded like a sleeping bird. The cameras recorded everything. The world watched. A small, private voice breathed from the card one last time, not through the speakers but in the silence in Mara's head. It said one single word, in a language she did not know, and then in a voice she could almost understand: returned. The hangar lights flicked. The card dimmed. Then, from somewhere beyond the doors, a whisper answered back, a sound like a child swallowing a word, and the hangar door locked from the outside. The lab smelled of bleach and metal. Big glass windows looked down on a row of white tables. On one table, a single seed sat in a shallow dish. It had been inside the crate. No one knew what it would do. The seed did not look like any seed the scientists knew. It was smooth and pale, with tiny veins like wires. Dr. Mara watched it through thick glass. She had not slept well for days. The glow on her arm had not fully gone. She touched the glass and felt the cold hum from inside. At first nothing happened. Then, slowly, a thin skin split. The seed opened like an eye. A small sprout pushed out. It was silver and soft. The scientists leaned close. Machines clicked and wrote numbers that made no sense. Instruments measured both life and metal at the same time. Someone laughed, a low, wild sound. Cameras in the lab rolled. The world watched again. A university live stream showed the sprout growing in hours what most plants did in weeks. It bent toward the light and then folded a leaf that looked like polished steel. The leaf drank the lab light and then gave it back in a faint, blue glow. Outside the lab, the city moved but felt different. The news said the seed was a miracle. Others called it a weapon. A woman at a market picked up her phone and watched the sprout. Her old radio at home began to play a melody she had not heard in 50 years. She felt a memory pull at her, soft and wrong. Tarek, the boy from the hangar, hummed the song again as he did his homework. The tune fit the sprout's small pulses. He did not know where the melody came from, but it fit something under his skin. The song reached into his dreams at night. In the dream, a little house stood on a hill, and someone knocked and left a box on the step. The knock was polite. The box had a mark like a seed. Across the city, other people began to dream similar dreams. An old sailor in a coastal town woke from a dream of a child with a blue scarf. A teacher in the north dreamed of a broken bell that rang again. The dreams were not the same, but a strange thread ran through them, a feeling that something lost was moving closer. Back in the lab, the small bead from the crate, thin and black, sat in a glass bowl. Technicians had tried to break it, but the bead stayed whole. When they played it under a microscope, it bent light into tiny images. The bead did not show what was. It showed what might be. Faces appeared on its surface. Not faces now, but faces hard with future lines and scars. The bead showed a ring of ships around a dark thing. The ships were human. The image lasted a breath and then the bead was silent again. A historian named Dr. Chen watched the stream from his office. He saw a pattern. He had studied old towns that vanished from maps long ago. In a faded archive, he found a drawing that matched the sprout's leaf. It was a tapestry, woven by hands centuries past. The drawing showed 3 dots and a line just like the map from the card. The old town had a name, but the name had been scratched out. Next to the drawing, someone had written in a slow hand, "Returned to sender, never open." When Dr. Chen said this on live television, callers shouted and cheered. Others swore. A religious channel called it a sign. Military commentators spoke of tests. The world split into rooms that wanted the truth and rooms that wanted to lock the truth away. Late one night, a young scientist named Priya could not sleep. She walked the lab halls and stopped at the glass dish. The sprout had grown another leaf. Priya reached in through safety gloves to touch it. The leaf felt like cool glass and warm skin at once. Her phone buzzed with an alert. Her mother's voice called from the other side of the city. She had woken from a dream and could not stop singing the lullaby. At the same time, in a field 1,000 miles away, a farmer named Matteo went outside to check his sheep. He saw a line of plants rising from the dark soil. They were the same silver shoots. They grew fast, bending toward the moon. Matteo called the police. The police called the government. The seedlings kept rising, and their leaves clattered like metal in wind that had no sound. Fear moved faster than the sprout. Videos spread of children humming the lullaby in classrooms. Hackers tried to trace the card's tiny voice. Some claimed that the song was a code. Others said it was a memory key that opened doors only the heart could find. That night in the lab, the bead played again. This time it showed a close face, a woman with a scar across her brow and eyes like drained coal. She laughed without humor. Then the bead cut to black. Priya screamed at the silence. She ran to the storage room and found a small man crouched in the dark. He held a box, one small fragment of the crate. He had a face pressed raw with fear and joy. He said only one thing: they should not have it. Before anyone could stop him, he ran into the night. Cameras chased his shadow. The fragment he stole blinked like a heart. The lab alarms wailed. Dr. Mara watched the footage with a hand over her mouth. The world watched with her. By morning, the stolen fragment had vanished. The seedlings in Matteo's field had opened all at once. They spilled a fine dust into the air. The dust glowed for a breath and then sank down to the ground like a promise. On television, a reporter whispered the new number of dreams that had come in overnight. People counted their songs and their lost things. The bead's images had shown one clear shape again and again, a ring of human ships and a dark, quiet sphere at their center. No one knew what it meant. Only one thing was clear: the past the crate had touched was not quiet. It was waking. The world had opened a door by looking. Now the door began to move on its own. The seedlings hummed in the fields and on lab tables. The stolen fragment was out there. and somewhere, in the dark between planets, a signal waited for an answer it had not yet received. The nights grew full of static. Radios that had been quiet for years hissed like old friends waking. People turned dials and phones lit with strange codes. At first the sounds were small, like a kettle about to boil. Then a voice came through, clear and slow, as if it remembered every word it would ever say. The voice spoke in English that belonged to no one time. It used old words and new ones. It sang the lullaby like a sentence. When the voice said, to those who never replied, some heard mercy. Others heard a command. In towns and cities, people stopped and listened. Some bowed. Some put their hands on weapons. Dr. Mara watched the broadcast in her office. She had seen the box, the card, the seed, and the bead. She had seen things that made scientists argue and soldiers sharpen their faces. The voice on the radio gave her a cold hope. She wrote down the words as best she could. Then she sent them to Dr. Chen and Priya. They answered in the small hours. Dr. Chen found patterns in the voice. It was layered, like a cake with many thin layers. Under the music of the lullaby, he found a warning. Under the warning, he heard apology. The apology came first in tone. The warning came next. It felt like someone saying sorry and then setting rules. Meanwhile, Priya watched the children. Tarek hummed the tune without knowing why. In schoolrooms, kids drew 3 dots and a line on their paper. Teachers smiled and cried. The lullaby moved like a key. It fit some doors in people's minds and did not fit others. A small observatory in the south began to listen with many radios and old antennas. Its director, a woman named Anna, fed the reception through machines that could separate sound like color. The machines showed the voice in strips. Each strip was a different meaning. One strip was an invitation. One strip was a test. One strip was a map. When Anna turned the map strip into stars on a screen, 3 points glowed. The points were not only places. They were times. She felt her chest tighten. She sent the picture to the world news. The picture flew around the world faster than any plane. People tried to answer. A hacker group that called themselves the Echo Line sent a simple message back, "We received." They wanted to be clever and small. They put the message on every public radio, in every TV feed, in the morning broadcasts of a dozen countries. Governments watched their networks go dark and then light. Some were angry. Some were relieved. The senders answered not with sound this time. They answered with sky. At dusk above the capital, people looked up. Stars are slow and old. People do not expect them to move for years, but that night the stars blinked. For a breath, the stars rearranged and then held that shape. Millions saw the pattern form like a giant sign written in light. The pattern was simple and terrible, COME. On rooftops, faces looked small. Priests whispered prayers. Soldiers cursed softly. A child on a playground pointed up with sticky fingers and laughed. Old sailors cried and said the sea felt different. The message was not on a screen. It was on a sky that everyone shared. Not everyone saw the same thing, but many did. In distant deserts some thought the light spelled a different word. In quiet villages, some heard a distant bell instead of seeing stars. The senders had layered their language again. They had learned to speak to many minds at once. That night the world split into new groups. One group wanted to go. "We must meet," they said. "We must know what the stars tell us." Another group wanted to prepare. "We must not walk into a trap," they said. A third group wanted to listen more. Maybe they will teach us, they said. The military said nothing in public. Behind closed doors they moved ships and counted pilots. Secret logs showed that some nations readying their fleets called the skyward a provocation. They demanded permission to shoot if anything came near. The people in power felt the weight of a single decision: open the door, or bar it forever. In the middle of all this, the bead that had been in the lab woke again. Priya played its small images on a private screen. The bead showed faces with marks. It showed human ships around a dark thing. The bead's images came back in fragments. Each fragment fit the map Anna had made. The bead did not speak in words. It spoke in pictures of what could be. Tarek dreamed of a table under a thin sky. He saw a hand push a plate toward an empty chair. He woke and drew the chair with a small mark on its back. He did not know why he knew the mark. He only knew the picture felt like an answer and a question. A small radio station in a mountain town tried to ask, "Why us?" The answer that came back was not sound but a feeling. Those who listened felt a gentle weight, like being handed a small, sad thing and told to decide what to do with it. The message made people ask what humanity had once taken. The message made some remember old tales of lost children, old bargains, and hidden treaties. At the end of the third day, the world had no plan everyone trusted. Some governments prepared envoys. Some prepared weapons. Some prepared speeches. The echo line, proud and nervous, sent another message: "We are ready to listen." This time the reply did not come from the sky. It came in a whisper on a million radios, in a tone so soft each person thought the voice spoke only to them: "We will wait." The wait did not feel like a pause. It felt like a breath held before a storm. Dr. Mara put her hand on the card she had opened months ago. The mark under her skin had not fully faded. She thought of all the small things the crate had returned: seeds, beads, songs. She thought of what else might come home when humans were ready. Outside, the stars burned steady again. But in the deepest dark between them, something moved like a slow ship turning toward a light. The world watched the sky and asked itself the same hard question: if someone knocks on the door to your village and says sorry, will you open it? The room where leaders met smelled of old wood and new fear. Long windows looked out on a city that still kept its lights. Inside, a round table held flags, papers, and hands that would shape the world. The word from the sky come had not left their heads. Phones buzzed under the table. Some faces were tired. Some faces were sharp. A small island leader spoke first. Her voice was calm and short. "We must send people who can talk," she said. "Not soldiers. We need a hand, not a hammer." A general across the table tapped a pen and answered in a voice like a door closing. "We send guards. We send ships. We protect our home." Dr. Mara sat at the edge of the room. She was there as an expert, not a ruler. Her hands folded and opened like a machine that had learned to wait. She remembered the crate's card, the bead, and the seedlings. She remembered the lullaby that came as both welcome and warning. She watched the leaders trade old fears for new plans. A secret vote began. Cameras watched the doors, but not the papers inside. Men and women signed names. The vote split like a river. Some nations wanted to answer the call with caution. Others wanted to answer with force. A small group, scientists, doctors, and a few diplomats, argued for a civilian envoy. They wanted people who could listen and learn. In a back room, a private group called the Covenant made a different kind of plan. They had money, ships, and a hunger for power. They wanted to take the kit's strange parts and make weapons. A man in a black suit tapped a small metal shard on the table. It glowed faintly. "We can make the world safe," he said. "If we hold the power, we hold the peace." Not all hands at the main table saw the Covenant's move. Not all knew that a fragment of the crate had disappeared from the lab weeks earlier and found its way into secret hands. The stolen fragment hummed with a pulse. It answered to things that greed could not name. Meanwhile, Dr. Chen found a line in a dusty book. It read like a warning and a promise: "Return things carry echoes." He sent the line quietly to the envoy planners. Priya kept the bead in a locked drawer and listened to its faint pictures at night. The bead showed not enemies at first, but choices. It showed mercy that could cost safety, and war that could cost meaning. The envoy would be small. Not soldiers, but civilians chosen to meet and not to fight. A captain with gray hair and a soft voice agreed to command the ship. She had been a sailor long before she wore medals. Her name was Captain Sarah. She read the map from Anna's observatory and counted the dots with a steady hand. "We go as guests," she said. "We go with open palms." On the day of departure, streets filled with people who wanted to see hope leave the harbor. Some held flags. Some held candles. The world watched live as the small ship slid into the water. Dr. Mara stood at the quay and touched the hull. The mark under her skin itched like a memory. She thought of the card's line, "Do not keep what you did not ask for." She did not know if that warning had been for them or for someone else. As the envoy prepared to climb aboard, the captain opened the hold to check supplies. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth and tied with twine, lay a thin packet. No one had seen it before. The captain untied it with steady fingers. Inside was a photograph. The photograph showed a city street the captain knew well. It was a bright picture, like summer sunlight. But one building in the center was gone, not damaged, not burned, but empty space like a hole in the world. Where the building should stand, the photograph showed sky and nothing else. On the back of the photo, a single line was written in a hand that wanted to be kind and also hard: "We returned what you stole." A cold moved through the captain. She showed the photograph to Dr. Mara. Mara's palms went wet. Around them, people moved in slow, small ways. Phones lit. The live cameras held every face. Then from somewhere far above, not the stars this time, but the sky near the hangar, a small laughter threaded the air. It was not a strong laugh. It was thin and close, like a child laughing from another room. Everyone heard it as if it were meant only for them. The captain felt her knees go light. As they tried to speak, the small mark under Mara's skin pulsed. It pulsed once, like a heart. The men who stood guard felt something on their necks, like a soft feather. The card in Mara's pocket stirred as if it had woken. For a second, the world felt like a small box being opened. Then the live feed cut. The cameras went to black for a breath too long. People in homes and squares leaned forward. They waited for the image to return. When the feed returned, the captain was putting the photograph back in the packet. Her voice was soft when she finally spoke to the crew. "We go," she said. "We take only ourselves. We do not take weapons." She folded the packet into a pocket and stepped onto the ladder. The crew followed. But as the ship moved away from the quay, a small screen on one of the harbor cameras caught an impossible thing. In its corner, a shadow or shape moved across the sky. It was thin and quick, like a hand waving. For a blink, the shadow formed the same mark that had burned on Mara's skin. It was gone in a breath. The world did not know what that mark meant. The envoy did not know the full weight of the photograph. The Covenant smiled in a room with closed doors. The bead waited in its drawer, quiet as a sleeping animal. On the ship's bow, Captain Sarah looked back at the city that had sent her. She held a small card in her hand and turned it so the wind could touch it. The card did not glow. It only caught the light. The captain did not know if she had chosen mercy or danger. Behind her, the ocean moved like a soft judge. Far away, in places that once forgot children, someone whispered a name that no one heard. The envoy sailed into water that had once been calm and now felt like a listening mouth. The envoy's ship slid through water that smelled of salt and oil. The crew moved with quiet steps. Captain Sarah stood at the bow and watched the horizon. The 3 points on Anna's map waited like small lamps in the dark. Ahead was a plane under 3 suns. Behind them was a world that had sent a photograph and a warning. They landed on dry grass that did not bend like earth grass. The air tasted bright and thin. Near the landing site, many shapes gathered, not all the same, not all human. Some walked upright. Some moved like boats with legs. They wore no armor. They wore cloth and small tokens that looked like old coins. They kept their distance and their eyes like careful things. A small group came forward. They carried a woven banner that showed 3 dots and a line. The envoy stepped down. Captain Sarah kept her hands open, empty of weapons. Dr. Mara walked beside her with the card in her pocket. The mark under her skin itched like a question. A voice from the group spoke in slow English. It was not the same voice as the card, but it held the same patience. "You returned what you once took," the voice said. "You returned them at last." From behind the gathered shapes, a small child stepped forward. The child was like a picture of both worlds. Her skin had freckles like stars. Her hair moved in a way that made the sunlight sing. She wore a small collar of silver leaves. When she looked at the envoy, she did not smile. She held a small toy that looked like a carved boat. The envoy drew a breath so deep it felt like a promise. They had come to do a hard thing, to meet and to choose. They had not come to take home a debt. But the thing before them was smaller than any debt. The child reached out a hand and touched Dr. Mara's sleeve. The touch made the mark on Mara's arm warm. "Who are you?" Captain Sarah asked with a voice that did not shake. The child tilted her head and said one word in a language not their own. Then, slowly, she said the same word in English, "Home." The senders told a story. Long ago, they said, human ships had taken small things, children, seeds, music from many worlds. They had done it in the name of knowledge, of safety, and of profit. The senders had hidden what was taken in safe places. They had hoped the humans would learn and change. When they saw the first signs, the strange seedlings, the bead, the lullaby, they feared humans had not learned. So they tried once more to return their things, in a small, careful way, a kit, a card, a test. "You returned what you stole?" Captain Sarah asked. Her voice broke at the last word. Dr. Mara thought of the photograph and the hole in the city. She thought of the stolen fragment and the Covenant. "Yes," the voice answered. "But some things are not like boxes. They hold new roots." The child's eyes seemed older than her face. "We send you a child because she belongs to both sides," the voice said. "She knows rivers you have not yet named. She is our memory and your future." The envoy argued with itself in small, firm voices. Some wanted to take the child back to Earth and keep her safe under glass. Some wanted to leave her where she was and ask the senders to teach more. Captain Sarah thought of the beads images, the ring of ships around a dark sphere. She thought of the photograph's single missing building. She thought of the world that had sent a photograph as a warning and then smiled when a ship left the quay. She heard Dr. Mara voice what they all felt: if we keep what was returned to us, we may make the wrong choice again. The captain closed her eyes. When she opened them, she had decided. They did not take the child as a prize. They accepted her as a guest and a charge. The senders agreed to travel with them, to cross the water and meet Earth in a safe place. A small pact was written on cloth with ink made from crushed leaves. Hands met across that cloth. The child held the inked corner like a blessing. On the voyage home, the child slept under a thin blanket. Sometimes she hummed the lullaby that had moved millions. Sometimes she drew pictures of places the envoy could not name. At night, Dr. Mara would sit near her and watch the small rise and fall of the child's breathing. The mark on Mara's arm pulsed when the child hummed. Back on Earth, the Covenant was not quiet. They used the stolen fragment and tried to learn the secret of the crate's metal. Their machines made fires that sang. They shaped weapons that answered to a pulse. The beat in Priya's drawer dreamed in silence. Some men in dark rooms counted power and profit. The envoy's ship neared Earth and the sky broke open. People gathered again to watch. Candles, flags, and quiet prayers brushed the coast. The sender's small delegation stood by the rail and watched the blue world that had once taken from them. The child on the deck stood and looked up with bright, simple eyes. As the ship crossed the last line into orbit, the sky above the city changed. For a moment, a mark burned, the same seed mark that had glowed on Dr. Mara's skin. It shone like carved bone against the dark and then opened into a pattern that spread across the heavens like a slow web. Children in bedrooms rose and hummed a song they did not remember learning. The child in the envoy's arms woke and sang the lullaby differently this time. Her voice slid into English and then into something else. The words were gentle and clear and terrible: you returned them. A hush moved over the watching millions. The child's voice went on: now we return the favor. The sentence did not end with a shout or a threat. It sat in the air like a cold hand. Some felt the line of the future shift. Others felt a small, certain fear. Captain Sarah gripped the rail as if the ocean were pulling her fingers. Dr. Mara touched the card in her pocket and felt the line under her skin tighten into a pulse she now knew. The senders stepped closer, not to push, but to hold. The child reached up and tucked a small silver leaf into Dr. Mara's hair, like a crown of peace. For a moment, it felt like promise. Then the lights in cities around the world went out in one long breath. Phones blinked. The Covenant's machines sputtered. The bead showed one last image, a ring, not around a dark sphere this time, but around Earth itself. What would be returned next? Mercy, a debt, a test, or something else? No one could say. The envoy had brought the child home. They had chosen mercy. The sky had offered a new sentence. The world held its breath and listened to a small voice that seemed to belong to both the future and the past. You returned them, the child had said. Now we return the favor. The words echoed as the lights came back and the ocean kept its long, steady score.